one of my more common modules that I have done a few times in the past, but one that needs to be addressed more often than not. And it's something that is of great importance because a lot of us lack the ability to communicate. And somehow we fool ourselves into thinking that because we understand what we say, that the person who's listening understands it the same way. The sad truth is, even when something is written down, the interpretation of that same sentence can vary tremendously. Are you with me?
Yes.
Rules and regulations, that's why even rules and regulations require arbitration. Because it can be interpreted one way or the other. Are you with me?
Yes.
Laws need interpretation, despite the fact they are written in the most correct way possible, in the most, comprehensive way possible. It's supposed to cover all eventualities. When a law is written up, there's a great deal of thought that goes into it. There is a lot of specialists who work on it. And yet, in spite of all that, because there is such vague interpretations that follow, the law itself requires interpretation. Hence, it's put lawyers into a job. And lawyers themselves, when they interpret the law, can choose to interpret it one way or the other. So, with such inexactitude, that means with such great disparity in what is being said, how do you communicate? Now, one of the issues that we face in communication because of teams that we work with, whether it is upline, downline, or whether it is an issue of even working in a common workplace, is that same point, communication. Now, in the English language, there are two words that are constantly, used for one another. One is conflict, the other one is confrontation. And for most people, it is one and the same thing. But there is an essential difference in understanding how both these words are used. So the term today, what we're going to be discussing is simply put, confront before you conflict. Confront before you conflict. It is the most fundamental rule. And most people, especially in our cultures, it is our position, our tradition to avoid confrontation. Let things lie. Let the sleeping dog lie, as they say. Are you with me?
Yes.
The only thing that happens is when you let the sleeping dog lie, is that he will bite you the next time. Are you with me?
Yes.
The problem is not solved. You haven't made friends with the dog doesn't know you, you don't know him, or whatever it is, and you still have to take the risk that he will be sleeping the next time you come through. The problem is still there. Nothing has been resolved. Now, in order to resolve it, you have to question it. In order to question it, you have to confront. If you have a different opinion, you keep quiet once. You can keep quiet once. But when you keep quiet twice and thrice and down the road, the first time you share a room with somebody, right? And it is, your roommate's practice to traditionally leave a trail of clothes, from his bed to the bathroom. Are you with me? You've had those kind of roommates. Their idea of washing is every Christmas and maybe, in between on Easter. Otherwise, the washing clothes just keep piling up. Are you with me? So the little things that, little things actually are the main issue. You don't actually go to a conflict over serious problems. It's very rare. You conflict over little things. Ultimately, it's just like somebody who rubs you the wrong way. Every time they say something, that irritates you, you keep quiet. Then you keep quiet again, and you keep quiet a third time, and you keep quiet the fourth time. Just out of the blue, he begins to say the same thing, and you're holding him by the throat and shaking him like a wild dog, He says, "What did I do?" And you say, "You just call me that again," So what did I call you? Whatever it is, if your name, he calls you Al, because he thinks, your name is, despite the fact that you keep telling him your name is Alfred, he says Albert. For the 25th time, then you turn around and say, "Look, it's Alfred." Are you with me? Yes. All right. And 25th time is not bad. Some of us have greater resistance. We can go all the way up to 250 times. But then on the 260th time, have you heard of the biblical saying that the straw that broke the camel's back? Right? So weight eventually piles up to the point where one straw and the camel breaks. So one straw and you are sitting on his chest, virtually ready to pull the man's heart out through his lungs. But you don't even know how you got there. Are you with me? So confrontation is regarded actually in our society, sadly, as something to avoid at all costs. It seems to be something that's a taboo subject. Everyone worries about it, But, he's my boss. But he's my neighbor. But he's, why, is it worth the trouble? Why tell them? Are you with me? Why tell them? Leave it alone. And it just goes on till the sore becomes a wound. Until the wound festers and you're ready to, you can't take it anymore. And usually the other side is just as surprised. So, or they are aware and simply couldn't give a damn. Either way, you rather deal with it than not deal with it. But when you confront, the one thing you do know is where you stand, where he stands. Before that point in time, it's all a little bit of a question mark, isn't it? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. Right? So it is always better. And if you're going to be in any kind, if you're going to see a person one time on a flight going somewhere and probably never see the person again, then you do what, traditionally most of us do. Lie like a dog. Essentially, you are nobody for that 2.5 hours. Are you with me? And after that, you might never see this person again, right? So you're sitting there talking, and the guy goes, "So what do you do for a living?" "Well, I don't want to boast about it, but, I'm a very famous actor back home." This, that, and the other. Are you with me? But then if you have to work with somebody every day, then you want to start off right. So if you're going to recruit someone, our tradition is, when we are out there talking to someone to convince them to get to know us, right? The mistakes we make are in the first few days. Whether it's a new boss and a new employee or a new employee coming into a new department, instead of setting it straight from the very beginning, that's the time you want to establish this persona that you're not. Then you have to spend the next 5 years living up to it. Are you with me? The more you let things lie, the more likely that they will arise. And they will always arise. Are you with me?
Yes.
Confrontation can hurt someone, and it's also the traditional excuse most lawyers use when they don't want to raise the issue. we might aggravate them. That's another way of putting it. See, one is we will hurt someone, the other one is what if you aggravate them, make them annoyed at us. Do we really want to do this? Okay? Let me put it to you. What's your name? Ahmed. So Ahmed is basically got up that morning and it's a wonderful day. He's, gone to work, blah, blah, blah. And spent half a day going, traveling through the bus, blah, blah, and arrives at work or college, maybe, university, wherever. So loads of people have been passing him by. And sometime in the middle of the day, someone comes up to me and says, Ahmed, my friend, I hate to tell you this, but your flower is open. He says, sorry, I didn't hear you. Your flower is open. So he said, no, I didn't hear that. Your zip is open, man. He says, really? And that's the day he chooses to wear bright red underwear. But then you see, all day there were people who wanted to walk up to Ahmed and say, Ahmed, tell the same thing. But they said, it's embarrassing. I mean, do I want to be the person who wants to embarrass him? No, not let someone else do it. What if he gets mad at me because I just told him about it, Some people, for some, unbelievable reason, get mad at the people who tell them that they are wrong, who tell them that they are walking around. There are many things that we do that actually are leaving our flies open. Are you with me? It doesn't have to be just de fact. There are many things that we do, parts of our personality, part of who we are in fact the same thing, but yet no one wants to come and tell you. For the same two reasons. One is that they might get embarrassed. Two, heck, they might aggravate you. And sometimes, instead of appreciating the fact that, this guy comes up to you and says, Ahmed, your fly is open. Ahmed, instead of saying, thank you, my friend, and then rushing to turn around and zip up, he says, how long have you known this? I have been sitting in front of you for half an hour, now you tell me. What kind of friend are you? I don't want to speak to you anymore. You get my point? The people do avoid it for all of these reasons. But at the end of the day, after you cool down and, are you grateful or not grateful? You'd be grateful. But what about the, 475 people who saw you from the time you left the house till 2 o'clock in the afternoon? None of them came up to you for the same reason, because why? They say, he's a stranger. Do I know him? I don't know him. Plus, the red underwear looks so funny. So why tell him? It happens. This is most people. This is in fact life. Are you with me? So be it, figuratively, the open fly concept is a very good way of putting it. I was watching the other day, it's a Canadian program. It has to be a Canadian program. But it's a Canadian program that's called Just for Laughs or something like that. Is that what it is? Just for Laughs, Richard?
Yes.
And this lady, on purpose, right, has her skirt, tucked into her underwear. And she's walking around this department store at the back. So obviously everybody who can come in can see her underwear. And you have so many people coming, one after another. The guys are looking, laughing, joking, pointing to each other. Someone is pointing to someone else. In fact, the crowd gathers. Some people come with their camera phone. Yeah? So even if you are a little embarrassed, it's better to be embarrassed. It's better to deal with aggravating or embarrassing the person than not tell him. I'll give you a variation of this theme. There was a New York University of New York that did a survey way back in the 90s. And I used this a lot during my early days when I was in training, in networking. People keep asking me why I chose to do what I did. And one of the reasons I said is because I want to help. And many people say, why? The world is already, got enough problems, do we need to go and solve other people's problems? And I said, and I keep going back to this statistic. So University of New York did this survey that essentially they put this old lady, very nice grandmotherly old lady, and she appeared to have collapsed on the subway. But in a fashion where when you come down the escalator, you're going to virtually, you have only two choices. You can stop and help, or you have to step over her and walk. And during peak hour in the subway, you have thousands of people walking by. Are you with me? And out of 100 people, basically, for every 100 people who crossed over that lady, one or maybe two will stop. The rest of them basically crossed over her. This is not like a bag lady, a vagabond or a street lady. This was a grandmotherly looking, nice old lady with a handbag and everything, collapsed on the road. And still, because it was peak hour, very important for HR people to recognize human nature. They stepped over her and kept walking. So they stopped these people and asked them, why? Why did you do that? And the most common reason was, the top reason was simply, the person behind would, I'm sure there's so many people around, the person behind would take care of it. Are you with me? I'm sure that somebody more qualified. I'm not a doctor, right? I wouldn't know how to help this lady. With so many people stepping by, I'm sure one person there will step in and save this lady. All right? So they say, it's not my problem. That's the first thing. The same reason why they didn't tell you about your underwear, Ahmad. The second was simply that I have to think about my family. How does that relate to your family? Simply because if I stop and I help this lady and I did this for this lady, it's going to take up time. It's peak hour. I have to be at work. I'm already late. I could lose my job. All because I'm helping a strange lady. Is this my problem? Another variation of this, is this my problem? Are you with me? And these were the top two reasons. There were quite a few others, and this is very interesting to look at that study, because a lot of the other reasons are also very interesting. The reverse, however, is about the people who stopped. The top reason for the people who stopped to help the lady, the first reason was exactly the same but in reverse. It says, I have a grandmother around her age, and if she collapsed somewhere, I have a mother, I have a grandmother, I have somebody, a grand aunt, somebody I love very much, and I'm not next to her. If she collapsed somewhere, I pray that somebody would stop and help. And therefore I stopped to help this lady. Does it make sense?
Yes.
The exact reversal of the role, the exact reversal of the logic, but it's the same reason why people stopped and why people didn't stop. Are you with me? Yes.
Then my question is, really, many different cultures notes different things. But when you make this call, you play safe, you do nothing.
Well, first of all, the person who has to stop has to recognize that you don't stop for 2 minutes. This is a stop that's going to throw the rest of your morning out. So the stop is going to allow or need an element of sacrifice. That's the first recognition. That's why people walk on or don't walk on. That's why people come up and tell you the truth or they don't tell you the truth. They don't talk to you about your zip because of the element of sacrifice. There's something that I'm going to lose in this process now. Is that worth it? So they stop or they don't stop. Now, in this particular case, if you were to take a look at it, it's a question of my whole morning's gone, probably. I'll have to get some help, take her to if you think it through, you know you're going to be spending hours on this. Get her to an ambulance, whatever, and if you take her to a hospital, you can't just dump her and walk out the door. Not in the States. You're responsible for her bill even, maybe. Because they need somebody there. They won't even, there's no such thing as a, like here in Malaysia, the hospital would take care of the person concerned, But over there, they want to have some kind of guarantee. So if you actually want to do something for this person, you probably have to be stuck taking care of the problem and may even end up paying for it. These are all the potential downsides. But is it worth it is the issue. So the first thing you have to confront is yourself. The real problem with confrontation is not the other person, it's you. It's your fears that stop you. Your fear of sacrifice, your fear of embarrassment, your fear of aggravation, your fear of anything else and everything else. It's ultimately that. You know perfectly well that be it in terms of confronting the individual because of the truth, or be it stepping to help someone. Are you with me? They're all variations of the same thing. It still comes back to the same point. It is something needs to be done. There is a moral dilemma behind it. Otherwise, you don't just confront. You don't confront because, it's don't get confused. If someone comes up to you say, no, Manchester City is going to win. He says the guy is a real, nut. Liverpool has to win. I better confront him. That's not how it works. That's not confrontation. All right? That's grounds right there, in a pub to get into a fist fight. Are you with me? You don't confront on an opinion. Are you with me? You don't go up to somebody who's perfectly well dressed, right? And say, I think, it looks horrendous. Is there any upside to that? Your opinion is of no relevance to that person. That person thinks they look good. That's why they're dressed. If she asked you for your opinion, are you, going around being the moral, custodian of fashion? What's your point? Practical side. Why do we confront? Because if you cannot communicate, you don't have a relationship. Every relationship is at the basis of it built upon communication. Otherwise, it's a lie. Is that not right? Think about it. The basis of every relationship is purely communication. You have to understand to the best of your ability what the other person wants, expects, needs out of the relationship. Be it, employer, parent, child, wife, it doesn't matter. The better you understand that, the better your ability to control and benefit from that relationship. And there is no other way. Not confronting leaves only more question marks. You step over that lady or drive past that 15-year-old boy once again, all you do is you have a question mark. Did he live? Did he die? Was I right? Was I wrong? Did someone behind me actually stop? Are you with me? And can you live with it? That's really the point. Coming back to the most simple element of just relationships per se, without truth, without communication, you don't have any relationship. The better you are at conveying what you want from someone, the clearer you are of establishing that, the better you will be at getting the proper productivity, the proper results from your relationship. Every relationship has a purpose. Everyone. Are you with me? even if it is between, say, father and child, right? If you are not able to communicate to your child, believe me, it is the most frustrating thing ever. And the ability to confront will help your communication skills. And at some point, doing it well at work will help you do it better at home. It is a process. Like any other process, it's going to take repeated attempts until you get better at it. Are you with me? It is always harder to confront those you care about, because the unfortunate baggage that comes with the relationship. Your trespass is always best with a stranger. After that, it's all downhill. Pretty much, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, I mean, if it stays on even keel, this is a good thing. Are you with me? But more often than not, you come to know each other. It is a process of give and take. But you give generally more to a stranger. Which is why, you can open up and tell all, the number of secrets that are poured out to a stranger on a plane that your husband probably doesn't know, or, you just pour it all out. The greatest need still remains with those that you love. And unfortunately, it's not your responsibility to make sure that the other person always understands. That is not in your power. You cannot control that. It's not your responsibility, nor should you have any expectations. I never said, it's not about confronting successfully. That's a whole different book. And that's a whole different subject. Are you with me? I merely said the need to confront. That applies only to you. You have to do it on your part. Now, whether it is successful is another thing. Now, if you get a 50-50 success rate, it's still far better than what you're doing right now. And the trick is you get better at it as you do it. You get a little bit more sensitive, you get a little bit more smarter how to do it, and you keep doing it till you are sufficiently, productive. You'll never be, this is not an art form where you're going to be brilliant at it. You're just always going to achieve. Here's the deal, even if you get, 20 or 30% of what you want across to the other person, that's pretty good. Because our normal communication rate is much, much lower. People don't actually listen to you, the words are the last thing they remember. It's a big shock to most lawyers, I know. But they don't. They relate to what they think they heard, which is totally different. Are you with me? And if I taped it, like in a training, many a time in a training, I said, people come up to me and said, but Dato, you said this. And I said, really? When? No, during the training. I said, really? I don't remember that at all. And we played back. And he heard something totally different. He sits there, he listens, and he says, yeah, actually, but I thought you said it, because you listen to what you want to hear. Are you with me?
Yes.
And when you want something bad enough, you can infer. Are you with me? And you can always infer. So, it's always, even when I say, are you with me, I have to be always careful. And I had IRs come up to me later and say, Dato, but you wanted me to be with you. That's why I'm here. So you see, people hear what they want to hear. Despite our language is actually a very imperfect tool. It has great limitation. In fact, too much of it is worse. And that's our problem now. When we talk and we have too much all inside, it's like a bursting balloon, it's like a waterfall. Are you with me? You press the button and the person explodes, he vomits all over you. How much can you hear? Hey, you look troubled, man. Are you all right? And that's all it takes. You think half a day is a long time, Joshua? Try this with Richard, you'll be stuck for a couple of days. And that's still not enough. He might come back for another round. There's a lot of frustration. We all carry problems, and do you know why psychiatrists get paid so much? To sit and listen. Are you with me? A trained psychiatrist learns to switch his mind off and watch the movie he was, seeing yesterday. He can sit and relive that whole movie and doodle on his pad. That's all he really needs to do, because just sitting there is therapeutic. Because somebody has to pour everything out. If he actually had to listen to everything, the man could actually end up on the other side of the couch. Yes?
How would I confront someone?
The only intent that you can ever have for confrontation, the beginning is all confrontation has some element of sacrifice. That's the first thing, all right? Second is whether or not, like I said, the objective is and should always be clearer communication or the truth. Sometimes, you are able to say so much more with a gift, with a gesture, than, 1,000 words. Are you with me? But since you are limited by what you have, which is language, you work with it. And thereby the rules of confrontation were born. Are you with me? Alright, so let's get into the rules. Alright? So rule number 1, check your emotions at the door. Most fundamental. It's the first rule that I had as a board whenever we met as partners, when the we partners met way back in 1996, so 97, it was the first rule that I had, always. And for the longest time, it was the first rule at the board meetings, check your emotions at the door. Now this is, for those of you who don't understand that, it's an Americanism. It basically means leave your emotions outside. You cannot confront with emotion. It just does not. Then the essential difference between conflict and confrontation becomes obscured. Conflict is driven by emotion. Confrontation is driven by rational thought. Are you with me? Fundamental difference. So, when you're confronting, you first leave your emotions out of it. You cannot, bring emotions into it, because automatically you create the wrong message. Almost right at the very onset. If you go up to somebody like Ahmad, different ways of conveying the message to Ahmad, right? It's like one is Ahmad, you fly open, man. Are you with
I think
me?
he'll be less offended than we.
You think so? I'll make sure they do that to you next time. I think there are many different ways of doing it, man. Red underwear, what the hell's wrong with you, man? The less emotion you throw into the message, the more likely you're going to get the message across without him thinking you're trying to look down upon him, or that you're making fun of him, or in any way or another slighting him. Same thing, be it the workplace or anywhere else. Are you with me? See, Joshua, if you're married, you would understand that. First point, if your wife is dressed up and you don't like the way she's dressed, you have to learn how to convey the thought. You cannot go up and say, oh my God. Are you with me? It's always smartest to check your emotions at the door. It's the most fundamental rule, simplest rule, and yet hardest rule. Why is it simplest and hardest at the same time? Why is it simplest and hardest at the same time? Human beings are emotional. It's a very good point, The thing is, we choose to be emotional. We can choose not to be emotional. Are you getting which is why in a courtroom, for instance, right? A judge is known as a sober judge. Are you with me? Imagine the judge was laughing all over the place. Are you getting? You need to establish, the greater the level of respect that you have from the person that you're, confronting, the better your ability to confront. So you need to keep working on that. And also you need to be able to draw a line. I mean, despite all of your challenges with that person, you can still be able to confront issues with that person. Are you with me? I mean, let's leave all this aside, let's talk about this. Can you do that? See, that's what you need in any relationship. There's always something ongoing. You should be able to park that aside and say, can we talk about this now? And draw that line. All of which is only possible when you can check your emotions at the door. Alright, next. Never confront the person. Always confront the issue. Again, a fundamental rule. Very important fundamental rule because it really defines confrontation. Confrontation is always issues. That's why in the English language you say confronting issues and conflicting emotions. Because emotions will get into conflict. Issues need to be confronted, and when you mean confronted, the word itself comes purely with the word front, means putting in front. That means coming up with the truth. Every issue can be seen in 2 or 3 different ways. So you confront it, turn the issue around, look at it from the front, so to speak. Are you with me? Face the issue. A lot of us actually cannot even face the issue. We don't want to know about it. One of the biggest problems is we don't even want to know about it. See, if one were to take the, open fly as a classic scenario, there is actually a lot of people walking around with their flies open, theoretically, mentally, but who are even aware that that is the case, but still don't want to know about it. Are you with me? They don't want to know, they don't want to change. Accept me as I am. This is me. I'm rude. This is a classic scenario, This is the way I am, accept me as I am, kind of thing. Because, why? Because that's the way, I was born, that's the way I was brought up, that's the way it is, and like it or don't like it or get lost, And they think somehow by making the statement it makes them superior in some form or the other. Confronting the issue is fundamental to another factor that I always use in my trainings, and that is adapt, adjust, accommodate. Alright? Adapt, adjust, accommodate is the strength of a relationship. Every time you are willing to adapt and adjust or accommodate, you can always work with anybody. And that's the strength that you want to have, to be able to work with anybody. I mean, there's always a problem. You walk into a group of people and there's someone who you cannot stand. Are you with me? The trick is to be able to work with anybody. If you can keep your emotions in check, if you can only confront the issues, you can virtually work with anybody. The biggest problem is we can't. We can't keep our emotions in check, and we can never confront only the issue, we always confront the person. And how do you confront the person? Instead of dealing with what actually took place, what the person actually did, you say, "You stupid bugger. Why did you do that?" Now the minute you say, "You stupid bugger," you're not talking about the incident anymore. Are you getting my point? The act was stupid is a different point. "You stupid bugger" means you're not confronting the issue anymore. Am I right? So you cannot bring the personality into it. And if you can draw that line, you can work with anybody. Race, culture, creed, country, notwithstanding. Because in essence, we are all alike. We are all one. So to say that, I can't work with, people who are like this and like that simply means that you are not checking your emotions at your door and you are not confronting issues. Two fundamental points. Am I making myself clear? So, avoid using the I and you word. Now, actually, this is rather impossible, as we found out during the zone. It is rather impossible. However, the trick is to use as little of it as possible. I mean, if you can actually achieve it, kudos to you. Hats off. But, it is one of the most difficult things to do. But believe me, by reducing I, you want to confront somebody because they have done something wrong, you want to address it. If you can drop I and you, try doing it. That's the approach. But the trick is, just reduce it. When you're conscious of it, you'll reduce it. And when you reduce it, you're heading the right direction. The more I's you have, the more you have, the more aggressive your statements become. When you're really upset with somebody, you take a look at how you're writing. In 20 lines, you will have 42 times I. It's as simple as that. I believe this, I think you did, well, blah, blah, blah. The more I's that you throw into the sentence, the more you differentiate. It's as simple as that. So you need to take I out. Next, you just manage you. Take a look at formal, formal invitations and the like. Maybe have the good fortune of your presence at this function, blah 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 blah, because it takes out the I and you. Are you with me? Okay, next. Never argue your point for point's sake, only lawyers do that.
We don't do that.
Actually, you have to. In court, your only objective is to establish the point. And that is the purpose of the entire argument.
Especially when we are losing.
Whichever the case, it is all about points. And your purpose is to establish the point. So you actually argue for the sake of the point. So the point of the exercise here is, when you are not in court, we need to agree that, for the purpose of confrontation and to make it effective, discuss it instead. The objective is communication, not domination, which is where bosses actually fail. They start off with, listen to me. The minute you say those three magic words, listen to me, the person switches off. Even with your kids, try it. You listen to me, okay? And that's it. The kid is zoom. No, that's the thing you'll be repeating for the next 15 years. You will never stop, because, that's the next thing that follows is what you have said before 250 times. So the trick is, not to dominate. Not if you want to make it an effective confrontation. If you're dealing with the issue, then what's the purpose in dominating the other person? The trick is communication is two ways. You need the other person to provide 50% of the material. It's a bridge, not a road. So bridge has to be, effectively bridges are built from both sides meeting in the middle. Are you with me?
Yes.
Hence, there you have it. That's the trick. Argue, but not for the sake of the point. Are you with me? You have to present the discussion on behalf of somebody else. Like for instance, if you are the boss, argue for the company. The company needs to have a better, reputation, and therefore we need to do something about it. The company needs this done, so we need to be custodians about this. Are you getting my point? The department needs this done, right? Our network needs this done. You taken out of it. Are you getting my point? So when you argue, I actually want to tell you this, okay? And there is it. So the person automatically starts to shut down. Or the person starts to gear up. Because then they also want to start with, I also actually wanted to tell you, okay? That's a very Malaysian style of doing it. Okay, next. Which means equal parts listening to talking. If you think you are confronting and you are doing all the talking, then you are probably in a lecture. Like this one. Are you with me? So you don't want to be lecturing to the other person. So if you think you're actually confronting issues with a person, and you are speaking for 85% of the time, your voice is the one that's being used throughout the entire conversation. The first thing you know is you know nothing about what the other person feels. You assume. Are you with me? The most dangerous with children. They are sitting there nodding their heads and you think they understand everything. It's already an art form they have perfected. The muscle here works in line with your movement of mouth. They already shut off, and all they can see is like that. Inside here is total silence. But at the right movement, when your, inflection, your head turns. And bosses, employees, the same thing. No different. They all learn the art of tuning out. So you have to just get better at this. And the only way you can, you have to let them talk. You actually need to encourage. You need to get them to come out. The bridge has to come from both sides. Equal parts listening must happen. Otherwise, there is no confrontation happening, no discussion, no issue. Somehow you must get them to talk. It's the hardest thing to do, believe me. Especially when you are in a stronger relationship, i.e. you are the boss, you are the upline, Stephen? When you are the upline, you see, there's edification all thrown in, very hard. So, which is why I try to get Patman to come down here and soften you guys so you will actually open up and talk, you see. So then we can do this both ways. But this is a fundamental rule. Next point. Begin with listening. The more you listen, the more effective you become in addressing. You start with listening first, always. So actually, in an effective confrontation, the first part of which is you establishing, what you want to achieve, right, in that discussion. It is really your listening. You have to First of all, get that person involved. Are you with me? I.e., now we're talking to Ahmed. Okay, you made the mistake, Ahmed, of putting your hand up first. So right throughout the training now we'll be using Ahmed. Now we're tired. What's your name? Amar. Okay, so now we go to Amar. So let's try Amar. The trick is, to get Amar to say more. So you start out by saying to Amar, Amar, our group needs to look better. We need to improve the way that we interact, the way that we dress, the way that we instead of saying, you could dress up better, why don't you spend some money, get some good shoes, all of that is a lecture. So we start talking about we need to look better. We, need to be smarter in how we approach our people, blah, blah, blah. It becomes a discussion. And then you kick into, well, Amar, what do you think? So you can allow him to get into it. Are you with me? Let's have your thoughts on this. And sit back, having established a platform, a non-aggressive platform. Are you with me? Very important to have. You see, the reason why a lot of people always ask me, why do I keep saying, are you with me? Or, do you follow me? Do you understand me? Whatever it is. Because the fundamental point is, the hardest thing for anyone to achieve is how much are you listening? And I have to gauge that in order to know whether I need to change the track I'm going on, use different information, maybe withdraw and go into another line of, thought, etc. and so on. And by looking at your reaction, those points that are most clear gets an immediate response. But when only one or two people, are you with me? You have two voices saying yes and no. I say, okay. Are you with me?
Yes.
See? See, Joshua, it's called reverse psychology. So, did you get that, Amar? The trick is to get them to open up. And listen, always do that, because I guarantee you'll be surprised. And the next, confrontation with egoism, lust, anger, hatred, jealousy, or malice of any kind will always fail. We talked about emotions at the door, right? Some people are very effective at masking their emotions. So they're actually looking very cool and calm, but they're driven by this negative thoughts. Are you with me? They're very calm and cool, so it looks like the emotions are at the door, but they're driven by egoism or lust or anger, hatred, whichever these issues are. We earlier were discussing what the purpose of confrontation was, Malti. Was it you or intent? And that the objective here must always be truth. Anything else fails. Communication depends on truth. Communication depends on you understanding it better. The truth grows as you grow. Don't expect it to be the same as it was at the beginning, but as your relationship grows, the truth grows and the truth changes. Are you with me? Hence, communication is about constantly arriving at the truth. Do you get my point? The more you communicate, the more you confront, whether it's a long-term relationship, must have its confrontation. There's no relationship I know that doesn't. Any long-term partners who have been together, for 20 years, husband and wife, you name it, any long-term relationship, where the team or the people have stuck together for a long time, 100% they confront. Pretty much application of common sense, isn't it? It's really pretty much, what I have learned by watching people who are very good at doing this. learning from people who have done it with me, and learning from people who actually have done it in a way that I have grown to respect them for what they did to me, that I have grown because of it. You know, I've had mentors and guides and teachers who have chosen to take the time to approach a problem, and I have been pretty rebellious in my own way. I make fun of Richard, but you know, I was far more aggressive in my day. You know, when I was as young as him. I wouldn't tolerate, you know, I'm pretty short-tempered in my own way, but still, they reached me. They got me to see the point. They got me to change. They got me to learn. So, on recapping, reviewing, looking back, and appreciating what they do, these sort of fundamental roles. Ultimately, it is only about the truth, because it is the only thing that keeps the relationship strong. When you go to somebody and say, you know, you need to be a better networker, I'm going to make you the best that you can be. It's a great start, isn't it? It's not about me, it's about you. Together, we are going to be better. Are you with me?
Yes.
And it's not the same things that you could do in a department. Right? Instead of drawing divisions between each other, you bring them together and say, look, we need to look good. Our department needs to look good. Our company needs to look good. Are you with me? And we need to therefore improve. And you can hammer harder because you're hammering the company. Are you getting my point? Hammering the department. This is where we need, you know, greater emphasis. This is where we are struggling. I wish we could be better at this, and yet that person doesn't feel that he or she is being, you know, ostracized. Because you are just using different words. But it doesn't matter what words you use, it doesn't matter how much emotion you check in at the door, how cool and calm you are, how well you are dressed, how great your tone is, if any of these are the driving forces. Are you with me?
Yes.
Even pity as a motive is self-defeating as an objective. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't work. It's like going up, you know, to Ahmed and saying about his red underwear, but feeling sorry for him. Although he appreciates the fact you told him the truth, he still feels miserable. Are you getting my point? Because the effect is like, you know, how stupid can you be? I mean, don't you even look in the mirror before going out, you know? Kind of thing. Instead of which, you could start out by saying, hey, it's happened to me, man. You know? I've done this before. Are you with me? You get? And my underwear was worse. It was bright pink. You see that? A little lie also can go a long way, because we just establish a rapport. Ahmad now feels, ooh, that wasn't too bad, you know. My bright red underwear didn't let me down, and, you know. Hey, he could be, you know, discussing underwear with Richard next time. So, the trick is, intent, even pity doesn't work. Alright? Next. The best intent. Objective is always the truth, right? The best intent is always love. I.e., when you do it with your child, with your wife, with anyone you care about, that you love, that is the most powerful motivation for confrontation. It is the most effective Because you will really put your heart and soul into it. You will temper yourself. You will make that effort. You will sacrifice your pride and ego because the person in front of you is someone you care about. Failing which, if love, you cannot reflect on a universal love, i.e., a caring love for everybody in your department or in your team. Right? If you cannot get that far, say, I'm just not that kind of person, then the next stop is kindness. Are you with me? Compassion, but always with understanding. And the next. This is the worst thing that happens in confrontation. This is what a lot of us fail in. Richard? We start off right, we get everything else right. We even get the emotions right, we get the, listening part right. We are tracking along beautifully and we fail because ultimately never digress. When you're coming in to confront, the temptation is to bring in all other aspects and weaknesses of the individual going back the last so many years. Then the more you know the individual, the more difficult it is not to digress. This is where the challenge comes. The baggage that I was referring to people who are close to you, be it a brother or a child or whatever, the people who are close to you come with baggage, and therefore the digression factor takes off the impact of confronting that particular issue. And it basically destroys the whole effect because everything you achieve in confrontation is lost. Because you end up going into a totally different diagonal session, something that some of us are very, very familiar with. And in fact, the whole objective of why you started the entire process is lost. And you were truly effective until that point. You actually got the point across and you are almost finishing, and that's when you go into, this brings to point another matter. This is where the words begin. It brings to point another matter. You remember or not when you started? And another problem is brought in. You finish the process. Are you with me? Effectively. You understand where and how this person, reacts to it and gets the whole process back. The feedback comes back and you say, okay, we need to talk again. Or you can proceed on to the next point, but only after this is finished. And there should be no relevance between the two. Because there usually isn't, only in your mind. Are you getting my point? And if they are closer to you, believe me, you will see relevance in every shadow. And you need to avoid it. It kills you every time. Dead in the water. Are you with me? Make only one point at a time. Resist has a T in it. Has a T in it. Okay. Don't worry, last. Even other people also cannot have broken English also. Okay. Next point. Never forget who you are doing it with or what you're doing it for. Two different points. I was tempted to leave it separately, but I brought it together. Never forget who you're doing it with. It's a big problem, I assure you. You're sitting there in the middle of the confrontation, you're dealing with the issue, right? And you essentially get into the issue so well that you forget the person who's in front of you and why you're doing it for. You're actually confronting for yourself as much as the other person. Number one. It's not a lecture. You want the communication to improve. Are you with me? So that means you're doing it for yourself. The instant you forget that, it becomes a lecture. But the first part, which is ultimately who you're doing it to, is also easy, because just like digressing onto all the other faults the person has, it's very easy to digress onto another person. You know, who else has this problem? We both know this guy. Pain in the neck, blah, blah, blah. And you've gone from a very effective, nice confrontation session into a gossip session. Very hard to resist. Especially for the office staff, when they gather, chit-chat time. But it's one person at a time, one issue at a time. Never forgetting that you're doing it for you. Because you need, not the other person needs this. See, there's always this altruistic approach. The great Mahaguru. Everybody wants to be this great mentor, teacher, guide, philosopher. It's just this little halo around your head when you're confronting. Because you say, you kind of think that, Saint Richard over here, leading you down the path of righteousness, blah, blah, blah. Can you see the wings at my back? But you forget that you're doing it for you as much as you're doing it for the other person. And that is the most important thing, why you're actually doing it for you more. Are you with me? So you've got to drop the halo. And the last point. Confrontation without compromise is only possible for a principle. All right? Never for personal gain. All right? Before we go to the second part, let's look at the first. Confrontation without compromise. That means all confrontation, by definition, what that means is all confrontation leads to compromise. At some level, you begin with compromise. Because confrontation is never a one-time process. It's always a flow. It's a process. It's continuous. You have to keep coming back to the same problem. People tend to repeat the same mistakes. People tend to do exactly the same thing all over again. Very rarely do they make new mistakes. New mistakes means you need to essentially have a different confrontation. The one that you are doing is already over because you've succeeded. But that's never, the case. More often than not, you end up confronting on the same issue. Right? If someone is late, he's always late. You struggle to get him there on time and still the bugger is late. Donna has a real challenge with this area. And still, she perseveres to get people on time. Right? But it's a non-stop thing. Be it whatever it is. Are you with me? Drinking. Are you going to stop someone drinking? Or smoking?
Joshua.
It's a process, I assure you. But you just come back to it again and again and again. And the trick is, don't give up on the person. Don't give in to the person, don't give up on the person. But you keep coming back and again and again. And you always end up with compromise. He says, okay, look, I slow down. I cut. I get there. I understand your point. I will change, But this is what I can do now. Be happy with that. By definition, it's going to lead to compromise. Accept the fact that you're never going to get through all the way. And that means you don't have any expectation. Be prepared for the next and the next and the next, somewhere down the line. Because this is a long-term relationship. Be it your downlines, your partners, your neighbors, your friends, your staff, it's the same thing. Are you with me? But there is one thing where you never compromise. And when you're confronting on that there is no space for compromise, such as a principle. Are you with me? There's simply no ground for it. You cannot confront a person about, say, stealing, for instance. Okay lah, next time I only steal half, okay. You get my point? It's a principle. It's too rigid a point. Okay? Next time I won't harass your staff lah, halfway lah, just kiss, okay. I like that. You see Joshua's face, it totally collapsed.
Behind side out.
There's no compromise on principle. Be it, on moral issues, be it on ethical issues, be it on legal issues. If it's a legal principle of the company, that too has no compromise. Are we clear? Like say, vegetarianism, as far as we are concerned in this company, no compromise. Are we clear? So on those issues, the confrontation is either you get this and you go around in every way possible, but get it in whole, not in part. Are we clear? All right. But if you're getting emotional, particularly on the principal issue, all right, because it tends to be something close to your heart, it tends to be something you are not prepared to give up on, and passion just step in, right? People are passionate about their principles. Always try to get someone else to do it for you, or at the very least, have a third party present. In fact, as a rule, I will tell you, always have a third party present, whenever possible. Unless you have some kind of absolute trespass with the person. And even then, I would suggest have a third party present. Are we clear? It's always been my practice with the directors over the years, with my partners and everyone else, to always have a third party present. Because confrontation is about, first of all, your ability to accept. And when someone is not willing to learn, what can you do? If someone is not willing to give up, say, drinking or smoking for that matter, all the confrontation in the world is not going to help. It doesn't change the fact that you shouldn't try, but be realistic about your expectations. Alright? So, ultimately, the basic rule to communication is confrontation. And the basic rule in relationship is communication. If you can communicate, a relationship can sustain. If you cannot, it will fail. So confront before you conflict. Confront so you can maintain your relationships. But most of all, confront because the truth is worth hearing. Thank you.